So this celebrity named Chappell Roan came out and said that basically both main political parties in the United States suck, with a focus on Israel and Palestine and her disagreement of how both political parties are handling that situation. Obviously, hardcore supporters of both sides are going to have a problem with that statement and say shit like,
one side is obviously worse than the other.
And D'Angelo happens to be one of those individuals. This was kind of surprising to me because while D'Angelo is super pretentious and says a lot of things I don't really agree with, he's still genuine with his takes. But in this video, he comes off as super fake and snaky by leaving out context of the Chappell Roan situation. So let's not waste any time and see why D'Angelo is wrong. Again.
If I had to sum up today's entire video in a single word, it would be miscommunication. Miscommunication gives way to minefields, and at this point, the Chappell Roan situation is exactly that. But first, welcome, my name is D'Angelo, and I am your professor of Jurassic orthodontics, which is a very real degree that I definitely do have.
Not funny.
So most of this interview was standard fare, except for this small part in the byline mentioning why Chappell Roan hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris.
You mean a celebrity made the decision to not endorse a presidential candidate? Oh my god, this is a travesty.
I have so many issues with our government in every way, she says. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. Oh, buddy, this is not a very strong start, but I'll get to that in a second.
What the fuck is wrong with that statement? She's not even saying both sides are equally bad, which I wouldn't consider a crazy take personally. But the simple statement that there are problems on both sides is just straight up factual. Both Republicans and Democrats have their shitheads and issues. That is indisputable.
And so she's managed to give an answer here without mentioning either Vice President Harris or Trump, but I don't think the core things she's saying are wrong at all. Objectively, one should use your critical thinking skills. However, I don't think there's problems on both sides is a good statement at all. Is it true? Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess that's the end of the video.
But we're getting into this really tricky territory where when you're in an interview, or even when you're putting out statements on the internet, if you're only thinking about what is true and what you believe, and you're not also thinking about how it can be interpreted, you're really setting yourself up for failure.
So basically, it's Roan's fault that she's getting flack because brain-dead idiots interpreted her statement incorrectly. Saying there are problems on both sides is not the same as saying both sides are equally as bad, and if you can't figure out the difference between the two, that's your fault.
There's problems on both sides is a talking point that is very popular among people who do not support leftist policies. And so I seriously think more specificity would have gone a long way. What problems are on both sides, Chappell? Are the problems on one side perhaps a little more extreme than the problems on the other? I don't know. Again, in context, the statement I think is fine, but it is so absurdly easy to interpret this incorrectly that I'm not surprised that that's exactly what happened.
Chappell Roan literally brought up that cis people shouldn't make decisions for trans people. Gee, I wonder what side she leans on. Clearly, this wasn't a mistake to perceive herself as someone who doesn't support leftist policies. Again, if that's how you interpreted her statement, that's your fault for being fucking stupid. So D'Angelo goes on to make fun of the people who failed to understand Chappell Roan's statement correctly, as he should, but the issue is D'Angelo is still blaming Chappell for not being specific enough and blaming her for her statement being taken out of context. As I said before, it's not her fault people are dumb.
I have so many issues with our government in every way, etc. I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. It is extremely unclear from the snippet what problems Chappell is referring to, and frankly, out of context, this just does sound really bad.
What's the issue with this quote? Why does it sound bad out of context? If she doesn't believe both candidates are good enough to vote for, even if one is worse than the other in her eyes, she has every right to feel that way without getting reviled by a sweaty mob.
The quote-unquote news and pop culture accounts that are clipping this out of context and spreading it all over the internet are definitely at fault here, in my opinion. But at the same time, media training, a little bit of practice with interviews would have alleviated this issue, because I promise you, a good PR person would never have allowed Chappell to say this in that exact wording.
I'm not a big Chappell Roan fan. In fact, I didn't know who she was until this controversy started, but I can confidently say she is hardly the problem. It's the people who have such a hate boner for the other side that all context and critical thinking goes out the window when those people lambast a very reasonable opinion. It kind of proves Chappell Roan's point too about both sides being bad. The side you're praising as better than the other is melting down because their hate for the other side was so strong they couldn't do 5 more seconds of research. I'm not saying it's stupid to be emotional when it comes to politics. It's fine to be emotional, but not if it comes at the cost of logical thinking, which was abandoned by many people in this situation.
And I really hope this doesn't sound like I'm coming for Chapel Roan or something.
What the fuck do you mean? You've been doing that throughout most of the video by blaming her for other people's stupidity and journalists taking her words out of context. So yeah, let's fucking hear it. Because I guarantee I probably won't be surprised by your comments about Chapel Roan.
She does have agency in this situation.
Yep, not surprised. You've already said that multiple times.
Question those in power, and I will stand up for what's right and what I believe in. I'm sorry that you fell for the clickbait.
Like, I get it, Chapel, I understand, but oh man, the clickbait that people were reacting to was still part of Chapel's statement, and we do just live in a world where people go off of headlines.
Yeah, how dare you let that interviewer take you out of context? You think you're the victim, Chapel Roan? Dumb fucking idiots on the internet misconstrued your words. Have you no shame?
There are huge problems on both. Trump, for fucking real, but some of the shit that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine.
Now, it's very important that we pause right here because we need to recognize that Roan brought up Palestine. Why is this important? Well, D'Angelo coincidentally never brings up Israel and Palestine for the rest of the video, despite that being a major factor towards why people, like Chapel Roan, aren't super excited about endorsing or voting for Harris. The only time this topic is thrown out there is when D'Angelo brings up Taylor Swift endorsing Harris, and he said it's okay for her to do that because he believes Taylor Swift herself doesn't support genocide, which is a pretty terrible talking point because one could argue you still enable those poor policies even if you don't outright support them. So yeah, D'Angelo decides to throw all critical thinking out the window and instead uses this ridiculous brain-dead claim as an argument.
A lot of people who express hesitation to want to vote for Kamala Harris, they're doing so because they don't care if Donald Trump gets elected. It's not really a I don't support Vice President Harris thing so much as centrism as enablement for the rise of the right is a real thing that happens.
Remember guys, even if you believe both candidates are committing genocide, you still have to vote for the lesser of two evils because we can't let the more evil side win. D'Angelo, I know you're definitely aware of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because you not only addressed it in a different video, but shared your support for Palestine. Deciding to tiptoe around the elephant in the room is extremely disingenuous. You know exactly why people don't want to vote for Harris while also not voting for Donald Trump.
And I know people are going to jump to like, you're tone policing, you're telling women how to speak, you're trying to silence them.
Yeah, if anyone is saying that D'Angelo is trying to silence women, they're just as brain dead as his video. But for you to claim that you're not trying to tone police Chapel Roan is fucking hilarious because that's exactly what you've been doing this entire video. You have repeatedly criticized how she sent out her message. And again, blaming her because idiots online couldn't understand her simple statement and the journalist taking her statement out of context.
There are problems on both sides. You know what I mean? The whole establishment is corrupt. The setup of it all is just depressing and yada, 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 yada. But what I didn't realize is none of this is false, but shouldn't I be compartmentalizing that energy for after the election? Like when one of the sides I'm complaining about is fascism, is anti-LGBT, is racist, is pro-forced birth, doesn't want anybody to have autonomy over their body if they're a woman, transgender, etc. Why not put my energy first into making sure that side is not in office? And then once we have the less insane administration, that's when you can unleash all the criticism you want.
What? Wait till after the election? How about we criticize both candidates and political parties whenever the fuck we want? You're basically saying we should just blindly vote for one candidate, see how it all works out, and hope things get better. You yourself, D'Angelo, have gone on the record saying you support Palestine and that the Israeli government is evil.
I don't support genocide. I don't support ethnic cleansing, and I don't support the country of Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip.
The US is currently sending over military funding for Israel, and if you believe Kamala would make a difference, then fair enough. But Kamala has also indicated that it'll be roughly the same if she is president, and if Chapel Roan isn't satisfied with that, then she should definitely be able to feel that way without feeling villainized. Roan has declared publicly she supports Palestine, and if she believes Harris will continue to fund that conflict in the Middle East, then why the fuck should she feel bad for not originally endorsing Kamala?
It's cause a non-vote for Harris is a vote for Trump, and he's worse.
So you're telling me if there was an election between Hitler and Super Duper Hitler, you would shame me for not voting for Hitler because Super Duper Hitler is worse? How about if I don't like either candidate, then I shouldn't be painted as the devil for not playing the lesser of two evils game? Pick better candidates and then people probably wouldn't refrain themselves from voting. Or, gasp, choose a third party.
But I personally am extremely open to people criticizing her statements. I love nuance. I love, looking at both sides of most issues.
Yeah, implying that the other side is basically the Third Reich multiple times in the video really comes across as open-minded and nuanced. Just be honest, your opinions are set in stone. Well, that's it for this video. D'Angelo just kind of rambles and repeats points for the second half of the video and then talks about some other shit I don't really care about. It's not really worth covering. Alright, bye and shit.